Welcome to Teatro Absurdo. That's Spanish for Theater of the Absurd, a program from Jaguar Bridge Productions. Well, hello, I'm Willow Marvavilla. I'm your hoster toaster, here to unravel, untwirl things that shall not be said. And here we go for part 2 of Teatro Absurdo's Shooting the Breeze. Yeah. Hello. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Teatro Absurdo, where we know everything's absurd, but don't commit suicide yet. And I have a very special energy field, Gracie and Warrender, who's going to help us unpack the magic of music. And we're getting a spaceship flying over us. So if there's a periodic airplane, what can we say? It's how we move around in the modern world, right? So Gracie, do you want to tell us who you are, where you're from, and what your background is, and anything you want to say about yourself?
Yes. So, hello. I'm excited to be here. I am originally from South Florida. I grew up there, near Miami in Fort Lauderdale, and I guess I'm a musician and an artist. I work in film as well, and yeah, I make music. I write music and I produce music as well. I currently live in Los Angeles, and I feel like that's me. I'm just a music enthusiast overall.
Fantastic. Well, who doesn't like music, right?
Yeah.
And music kind of, I was talking to somebody the other day, in the absurdity and the seeming, a disparity of everything right now. I mean, music helps us shift our mood. I mean, it's wild how it can do that. Like I can put on, I know you and I have an affinity together. We both like dance music. Mm-hmm. I'm an older dude who really likes relevant music and can still shake my groove thing. But we had a discussion when you were in Costa Rica and you had just come out of the Miami, that is probably a better word for Miami, a music festival there. What was the festival there?
I went to Ultra Music Festival, which is at like the tail end of Miami Music Week. It's like a really massive, mostly like dance music, electronic music based week and festival. Right. But yeah, it's really fun though.
So one of the things that you mentioned to me was there was a DJ or someone you spoke to that they were being present with the idea of music and shamanism, sort of a shamanic DJ. And without a doubt, the escalation of the importance or center of attention around a DJ is pretty strong. I mean, it used to be, DJs have always had a certain power. I mean, they've had a power to make music famous and recognize, off the beaten path artists and stuff like that. Yet, I know personally, I have participated in ecstatic dance, generally at festivals or Burning Man or whatever, but also as a means of healthcare, wellness. I studied what was called soul motion dance in the Bay Area. And then it led me to seeking out and finding ecstatic dance groups, which are awesome. I hope maybe you'll find one in LA, probably downtown LA is one. But It's like listening to really good beats for 3 hours without the booze, but with the cannabis for sure. Which lets you sort of move your hips in a way that you're probably going to be in pain the next day. But do you want to speak to this person you spoke to in Miami what the idea is behind music and DJ and festivals and shamanism.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that I found like really interesting about this conversation is like basically idea of like where do we find like shamanistic practices in our everyday life? Like not even just in like the music festival scene, but like what are things that we do in our everyday lives, like in our modern society that like have their roots in these like shamanistic rituals and such. And I think with like the music festival scene and especially within like the electronic dance music festival scene, it's kind of guided by these principles called PLUR. It's like that's the acronym. It's peace, love, unity, respect. And so that kind of starts with setting this whole tone of like this is kind of like it's a community that's more than each individual, and you're bringing yourself to it and can like experience it in your own individual way. But there's a lot of like mutual respect and like friendliness with like everyone else. And part of that like respect is like when you're watching an artist just like letting yourself feel the music and dance and not think about like what you look like or who's looking at you, and just like have this like very like just like I'd say for me at times a spiritual experience of sorts, and feeling that music and letting that music guide what you're doing and how you're feeling in that moment. And so that's kind of what the conversation centered around. But it also extended more than just like you listening to the music, and also that there's kind of this like costuming element to like how you dress for these festivals, like getting to have a sense of self-expression, but usually dressing in ways that you wouldn't dress in normal society because it's kind of a special event for you. Or the various like, I mean, these festivals are also known for being like places where you might like use various substances and like and in healing ways too. But I don't know, there's like a lot of ways to connect parallels of kind of rituals, and like the DJ almost acting as if as a shaman in ways of curating the music and the mood and the energy of the set, was another thing that we kind of spoke about. But it is kind of interesting too, because a lot of these artists they'll like use certain types, like certain imagery and certain like sounds that we correlate with like dreamy, trippy things, or like space, or even like some like darker, deeper, like hellscape type things. And it can really kind of curate this mood and bring it forth certain energies into the experience, which I find, very powerful and very interesting. A very interesting way to get your artistic view across.
Right. I mean, there's so much to unpack in that. I mean, one thing is I want to just go into, because you mentioned sort of, I don't know if I'm repeating this exactly, but something about a hellscape or something, because I can't remember what one DJ is, and this isn't a PR for any DJ, but one of the things that can be done if it's intentional, because if the idea is okay, this is a ritualistic, ceremonial, intentional gathering through music and dress and etc., is it can be both. It can be a way to discover, enhance, and activate the ecstatic regions, which are considered the angelic realms, or yes, and to be present with the shadow. And I think the absurdity in this world is, if we just have fucking positive thoughts, it's all going to go away. And yes and no, because part of the assignment here in this realm is the shadow trickster. Mm-hmm. And I think, you mentioned, the imagery, and the imagery, like the VJ, the video DJ, mm-hmm. is phenomenal, because those are going into the optic nerve. And if you have people in hallucinogenic states, which is a large percentage, it's creating neuro connections, fractals into the mind. And I think there's a great possibility with it, if it's done well, sans the DJ, ego, like this has to be all about me. So, so the next level that I wanted to speak to you, you didn't mention it too much, but you're quite the singer. I won't ask you to sing on here unless you want to. But and you were involved at the university in a singing group. Do you want to talk about that? What your experience is of singing a cappella?
Yeah, when I was in school for 4 years, I was part of an a cappella group. And for 2 of those years, I music directed the group. So I was pretty much in like the main facilitator of our rehearsals and gathering our music. I arranged a lot of our music. I helped teach others to arrange it. And it was a great experience. I really enjoyed it. I like to perform a lot, so that was a great avenue for that. But I also feel like it was a really fun and new, but which ended up becoming like a really favorite thing for me was arranging the music. I'd only learned to do that in the group, but it was a really great way to kind of have my hand in like more of the creative process of that group coming together, which was really cool.
Can I ask you, why do you like singing a cappella? I mean, most people want drums and guitars or something, piano. What was your verve in that?
One of the things that I always have loved and gravitated towards is like harmony in general, especially with voices. I think when you have like just like really beautiful like sets of harmony, for me it just like gives me goosebumps. And so I really liked having like just another group, like a large group of singers around me. There was about usually around 20 of us every year in the group, so it's a pretty big amount of people to be like collaborating in that way. um but I think that there's just something unique about like um vocal harmony compared to the harmony that exists in like a band with like various instruments and stuff. And it's really beautiful. And when we're all like singing together, I think it allows us to even connect to each other in a different way than we would be if we were all playing different instruments. Um, so I really like that experience for the kind of the collaborative nature of it all.
Did you I had a friend that I worked with in New York years ago who's quite famous now, Suzanne Vega. And it's interesting because I remember in the early 80s, before she was recognized, she would show up at Folk City in Manhattan in the Village, and she would just get out there on stage all by herself and sing a song a cappella, which was Tom's Diner, which became very famous. And, in an unaccustomed realm. I mean, later she put accompaniment um, beneath it, but I think it brings the audience in a different way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my God, what do you mean there's no music? And the vibration is just on the vocal cords then that the audience receives. I had another friend of mine who was in a a girls group or women's group called Kitka, and they sang a lot of those Balkan um, chants sort of things. So that I think that level of music a cappella is probably really old and very
Definitely.
ritualistic.
And very raw in the experience as well.
I mean, so let's move on. So in that level, I want to talk to, we spoke about this backstage a little bit, and I had time to put a page up on my computer. So there are really deep metaphysical energy fields around music. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
phenomenal of, how it can sedate people, binaural rhythms, that can move the mind and relax it and all sorts of things, activate DNA, who knows? But there was something called the music of the spheres. And this attributes to, when I speak of the Mayan calendar, I'm not an expert on it. I'm certainly not Mayan. So I realize there's many translations of this timekeeping piece. So I don't want to walk into appropriation. However, as a possibility, there have been certain ceremonial integrations of music to align themselves with greater vibrations of the universe. So given that like the sun has a song, the moon has a song, the earth, etc., but these would carry into this interpretation of this lunar calendar that there were passages of, I don't know, what is a cappella, harmony, melody, fugue? What are those? Can you speak to that a little bit? Like expressions, like the fugue in classical music is really, it's death march, right? It's a and melodies like, the moon is in Aquarius,
Yeah, I mean, I think that part of what that goes back to me, kind of what you were speaking about earlier about like the vibrations of music and how, certain sounds to us register as being like kind of more like higher vibration, like excitement, ecstaticness, and then some of them like lower vibrations that might be like droning and like bring out that more like, I don't know, lower vibe, I guess. But and I think like having those associations with like the elements of the earth and the universe with the sun and the moon and all of that, just I find when you speak about it, I find it interesting to think about like what we would each all associate with like the sun as sounds and the moon as sounds. Because when I think about like electronic music, it's really easy to be like, oh, this sounds very spacey to me, like ethereal space, like void, like ever present kind of thing. And I think as humans, we're able to like make those similar associations like as each other. And I think that kind of does speak to some of like the history and maybe like power of music to make us all feel in a similar way. And also that it's, to me, that's interesting that it's like modern music and popular music, like we have lyrics that kind of help us guide what the tone of the song should be and such. But when you kind of strip it down to like just pure sound, whether that's like vocal inflection, not necessarily words, or like instruments and their tonalities and stuff, we can still kind of have those associations, and kind of have a collective consciousness understanding of what those associations are.
Well, absolutely, because I remember there was I hope I speak to this, but there have been, in the late 80s, there was something called the harmonic convergence. And this was something that people got together and almed or chanted or something, because there was this great passage of alignment of the stars in order to harmonize the energy of Gaia. But without a doubt, I think music is vibration, is what we're getting in. And even the lyrics, what I want to speak to is the absurdity is that people think music is just something, some background thing. But if you look at, I saw where Joni Mitchell was just made an appearance at the folk festival in Providence recently. And I thought, and I've been thinking about this a lot, is how lyrics to music can actually start a revolution. I mean, there was a song, you're from, well, part of you is from Ohio. I'm from Ohio, but there was a very moving song that Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young did years ago called Ohio. And it was about the shootings at one of the university where you had people using music and lyrics to spread messages of relevance. I think rap went there for a while, and there's probably other levels now. So you're getting ready, congratulations, to go back to school to study music production. Anything you want to touch on that? Because that seems like daunting to me in this world.
I mean, I think for me, it's really exciting. I think it's a really fun, like kind of call to action and like a chance for me to really like focus on like what my art means and give it the chance to like kind of have that as my sole focus and develop that. So I'm very excited about it. And I think as I've kind of getting prepared for that, I've gone to a couple festivals recently, and I've been like kind of taking in that experience and thinking about how that's going to like affect my artistry, or like how I want to like perform in the future, like what I would want to like put out there to my audience, and like what kind of like even everything as much as like what kind of visuals would I want and stuff. And one of the things I was thinking about, kind of how you were saying, like this idea that we've used music to like spark revolution and change. I think there's kind of, when it comes to just like where we're at in the world, there's like a call to action needed for people and for beings that have more of the kind of like open third eye, like open to these, not so much on like a physical level calls to action that we need, but like these very spiritual, like deep energies that I feel like are coming forward to call us to like save the planet and help the planet, and like love each other and all this stuff. And I went and saw this DJ, his name's LS Dream. And during the middle of his set, he kind of started giving this speech with like this really pretty like ambient music behind it, about like taking a minute to like slow down and all be present in this moment. And then as he's going on, he's like, I invite you right now to like close your eyes and just listen to these words I'm going to play, and like played a meditation in the middle of his set at this festival, which I thought was very interesting and really cool too, because I was like, oh, like your art can really be anything that you make it, and people, the right people will find it. Because in that moment, I'd been like exhausted all day. This is one of the last sets of the day. Me and my friend are just like sitting down, and his set just like really brought our energy back up, purely from just like the sounds and the words he was using, and also being able to like sit there with our eyes closed and like meditate and like and be present in that moment. That was just something that recently that stuck with me as I'm kind of like making this journey into like school and stuff, of like, oh, like I can use my art to do a lot of cool things and like affect a lot of people.
Yeah, and that's the thing I've been emphasizing with different artists and people I've been speaking to is someone had reminded me, as an artist, there's two things. One, it helps us see ourselves and hear ourselves and to learn about ourselves, things that journalistic media, we're not even going to go there. But, and the other one is that as an artist, when you're calling attention to yourself, there's a great responsibility. And certainly at these mass festivals, rather than the DJ being, self-centered and all coked out or something, they can actually, move energy into a harmonic state and send people out motivated, liberated, changed, charged, this sort of thing. Because what I appreciate that you're seeing the whole energy field of music, and the visuals, because once again, we'll throw names out here and they mean nothing. They're on the level of popularity. But I was talking to somebody the other day about Madonna, and good, bad, ugly, whatever. However, as a Hollywood witch, her music is what it is, and it has a certain beat. People want to move to it. Yet in her videography and her stage performances, she pushed back at every single system, at the racism, at the homophobia, at the Catholic Church, all these different things. And even at gun violence, and her recent more theatrical performances that she did, she really spoke to, and I remember in around 2000, she did a album, I think, called American Dream. And she kept flashing up images of George Bush with like Hitler. And you have to think, well, shit, this is pushing the bar. So as new musicians go out there, what would you like to do with your magic?
I mean, I think for any artist, especially like artists of my generation, like people in their like kind of Gen Z, like early 20s, late teens right now, I think one of the things to our benefit is the platforms that we have available, like things like TikTok and like SoundCloud, um, these like social media and like music social media apps that allow us to like connect with like audiences that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do so easily previously. Um, and also like kind of going through like this whole COVID period and just with all these like very extreme things that are happening in our world, the point of view of young people, like I don't know, I think that like, you know, every generation kind of has these big events that shape them, whether that be like, you know, like Vietnam, back in like that time. And like I think COVID is going to be that very much so for my generation. Um, I think kind of feeling all that and being able to kind of come out of it and express myself and like my emotions and just like the experiences I've had, I feel like much more after being so isolated for so long. I feel so much more equipped to share my messages and feel like I want to be like heard. And I've taken a lot of time in throughout like the pandemic and all of the lockdowns and stuff to be very like introspective and like learn a lot more about like myself and the things that I value in the world and the things that I would like to see it happen in the world with the changes I'd like to see. And a lot of that comes down to like empathy and um, communication with people and like highlighting that like yes, we're all different people, but we're all very at the end we're all like human. So to me, that's something that I really would want to express in my music for sure is the connectedness that all of us need to have in order to like I think continue on in a very positive, a more positive direction.
Well, exactly. And there's two things, and then we're going to wrap this up. Is one thing, I mean, in a natural physical sense, I had heard that, um, the vibration of songbirds, as they sing their songs, there's two things that can happen. One is very interesting that there is studies that there's thinking that certain birds can, through their song, activate seeds to sprout that become their food. I mean, that's just the level of it. And the other one is that they say in places, and I think I had spoken to this when you were in Costa Rica, is that, and there's a lot of bird sound in the morning there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that when you hear birds singing, they actually send into your cellular mind that everything's okay. And I think about this in places where people don't hear bird song. So what can take its place, no, well, not even take its place, but something that can help through that is very cool music. I mean, do you, I'm sure you, well, do you use music to work with your moods? Like I know as a
Absolutely.
writer, I would sometimes be writing and I was like, okay, I have to write a really sad scene. So I would put on something like this symphony score, Henryk Gorecki, which he had composed a symphonic composition in Auschwitz. And it's beautiful, but it's like breathing heavy sighs. So what's your go-to to cheer you up or to give you energy or to slow you down? Do you have any tidbits you want to share there?
For sure. I think one of the things, not only is it like, oh, if I want to feel a certain way, I might put on a certain type of music. Something I feel like I've been working on a lot lately is if I'm feeling like not the most positive emotions, if I'm like sad or like upset and angry or whatever, I think it's important to like allow yourself and give yourself permission to feel those emotions. So I think music allows me to do that as well. Like if I'm like having a rough day and I'm sad and I just want to like cry for a little bit, I'll put on some like really slow, like singers songwriters like breakup songs and stuff like that and just like cry for a bit and like let myself feel that and then it's like okay, like I got that out, like let's put on some dubstep and like rage for a minute. um so yeah, I think that like I don't know, I really like pop music and like especially like hyper pop and a lot of the like um I don't know, a lot of like artists that put out like really like fun music was really just good vibes. hanging out with the friends and wanting to dance. And I do listen to a lot of EDM, so I find that that can be like a really fun, like energizing music. But I also like think that like I really like classical music, even going back kind of to that. Like when I'm studying and stuff, it really helps me stay focused. Yeah, but I do find that like it might vary for each person, but like finding the right kind of music that puts you in the moods you want to be, I think is like very important, and I think very powerful for sure.
Right. And well, we're going to wind this up, but I know I'm 61 and I hear, and I appreciate it, but I hear certain people around my age like, oh, I don't listen to that music and this and that. And I find myself intrigued by the evolution of music because it touches something new in me. And certainly when I'm painting or something like that, because I work so much with consciousness and art, it does take me out. So my beautiful friend, any final words of blessing for this cuckoo nutty world we live in? Anything?
I don't know. I think that kind of with this conversation of like music and kind of shamanism, spirituality, whatever kind of connections you can make with those. One thing that I feel like it's important to point out is whether your music's like hot, kind of has more of that high vibrational energy or the low vibrational energy. I think having both of those existing together is really important. It's like kind of like the balance between the two. And I don't know, keeping that in mind as you're like listening to music also might be important to finding that balance for yourself and making sure that you're getting good meaning out of what you're like listening to and the stuff that you're like investing your time into listening to.
Fantastic. So if you're like really in a place of despair, people, shift your music up a little bit, lighten it up. And, like you've got your own internal equalizer, find that harmony. Well, thank you so much, Gracie. And until next time, this is Teatro Absurdo, and I'm Huilo Marvavilla. Ciao. Bye.